Hey everyone, you ready to dive into this?
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, we are tackling How to Win Friends and Influence People, the revised edition.
The OG of self-help,
Ah,
right?
seriously,
Yeah,
it's been a bestseller forever, so we're going to figure out why this book is still so popular.
I'm game.
And more importantly, see what advice we can actually use, in our own lives.
For sure. Whether it's at work, with friends, or just like dealing with people at the grocery store.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to be better at winning friends and influencing people?
Right. Sign me up.
Okay, so first things first, what is it about this book that makes it so timeless?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because it actually started as a textbook for Carnegie's own courses.
Huh, I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
it wasn't always meant for us regular folks.
Nope. But I think the fact that it's still so relevant today, like almost 100 years later,
Yeah,
it really shows how it taps into these like core human desires. And those haven't really changed much, even if the world around us has.
that's true. People are people. Okay, so let's get into some of these timeless takeaways. One that really stuck with me was this whole thing about appreciation,
Oh, yeah.
like genuinely appreciating people. Carnegie argues it's even more powerful than money, which sounds kind of crazy.
It does a little bit.
But then he tells this story about a woman who literally gave her car away to someone who just showed her genuine appreciation.
Wow. Okay, now that's appreciation.
Right. What do you make of that?
I mean, it speaks to how much people crave being valued, like for who they are, what they contribute. It's a fundamental need.
I can see that.
We often focus on, financial rewards or whatever, but sometimes a sincere thank you, just acknowledging someone's talent,
Right. Yeah.
that can be way more motivating, and it builds stronger connections than like just a bonus check ever could.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's so easy to forget those simple things in the rush of everyday life.
Absolutely, we get caught up in our own stuff.
It reminds me of something else Carnegie talks about, the simple act of smiling. He was like obsessed with the power of a genuine smile.
Oh, totally. It's such a small thing, but it can change the entire tone of an interaction.
For sure. Like if someone smiles at you when you walk into a store.
Exactly. It signals you're open, friendly, it's disarming.
Way less intimidating than a poker face.
Right. Carnegie even tells this funny anecdote about this guy who got a compliment on his hair. And the guy felt amazing all day because of it. It's like this ripple effect of positivity.
I can totally see that. A little compliment can go a long way.
Absolutely.
But then, sometimes it's hard to stay positive, especially when you feel like you need to stand your ground, like in a disagreement.
Yeah.
But Carnegie goes on this whole thing about how bad criticizing people is.
Yeah.
He's like completely against it. Why is that?
Well, he understood that criticizing, even when you think you're being constructive, it often makes people defensive. Like you're attacking them, not the issue.
Ooh, that makes sense.
That-
Nobody likes to feel attacked,
Exactly. Instead of trying to prove someone wrong, he's all about trying to understand their perspective.
even if you disagree with it.
Even then.
So how do you deal with disagreements then? Without criticizing. Carnegie has to have some tips on that, right?
Well, he does say to try to avoid arguments as much as possible.
Easier said than done.
Oh, for sure.
Like avoiding arguments altogether, I feel like that's nearly impossible.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
I mean, he even opens the book with this line, if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive.
Okay, that's a pretty vivid image.
Right.
You don't get honey by making the bees angry.
Exactly. And it makes sense. Nobody wins in a shouting match.
Definitely not. Speaking of shouting matches, so does Carnegie have any good stories about arguments gone wrong?
Oh, plenty.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so he tells this funny one about this dinner party he was at, and someone misquoted Shakespeare.
No, everyone's worst nightmare.
Right. And Carnegie, he knew they were wrong, but instead of just like letting it go, he corrected them, even though like no one asked his opinion.
Oh, I've totally been there. It's so hard to bite your tongue when you think you're right about something.
How do you work?
So what happened? Did everyone stare at him?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And afterwards, a friend of Carnegie's pulled him aside and was basically like, why would you do that? Why would you embarrass that person? Is that really going to make them like you?
Ouch. That stings worse than being wrong in the first place.
I know, right?
It's like a double whammy of awkwardness.
Totally. And Carnegie realized he'd made the person who misquoted Shakespeare uncomfortable, but also like put his friend in a weird spot too,
Yikes.
right? It's a good reminder that sometimes, even if we're right, being right isn't as important as just like preserving the relationship.
So it's about picking your battles.
Exactly.
Knowing when to just let something slide.
Yep. Carnegie calls those points of disagreement, like those sharp points, the acute angle.
Okay.
And he says avoiding that acute angle, that's key to good relationships.
Interesting.
So, like, instead of trying to win every argument, he suggests finding ways to at least acknowledge the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
So kind of meet them in the middle a little bit.
Exactly. Make them feel heard.
That actually makes me think about his point about making people feel important. Is that tied into this at all?
Oh, 100%.
Like, even if someone's wrong, sometimes making them feel heard is like way more important than like winning the argument, you know?
You're totally right. Carnegie says that one of the most powerful ways to influence people is to make them feel important. And it's not about showering them with false praise or anything. It's about genuine appreciation, like recognizing their strengths, acknowledging what they contribute, just making them feel valued.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? Because I feel like we've all been in those situations where someone's trying to butter you up, and it's so obvious and it's so insincere, and it just makes you feel worse, you know?
Right, it has to be genuine. Like Carnegie tells this amazing story about this woman who was so appreciative of someone just showing her some genuine kindness and attention that she gave him her car.
She gave him her car.
Yeah.
Okay, now that is appreciation.
Right. She was an elderly woman living alone, and she was just craving that connection and recognition.
It's kind of heartbreaking, but also really heartwarming at the same time.
It is.
Wow, that's quite a gift, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it really shows you the power of human connection, right?
It really does. And, you know, Carnegie also talks about this other anecdote that always sticks with me about George Eastman, you know, the founder of Kodak.
Yeah.
Okay, so this salesman, James Adamson, he was trying to secure this huge order from Eastman, but Eastman was initially not interested at all.
Okay, so how did he turn it around? Did he, like, offer him a discount or something?
Nope, nothing like that. He noticed something in Eastman's office. It was beautifully decorated, and it had this incredible English oak paneling. And so instead of, you know, launching into his sales pitch, Adamson just took a moment to compliment Eastman's office, and he specifically mentioned the wood.
Ooh, smart move. Play to the man's ego.
Well, it wasn't about ego, it was about genuine appreciation, because it worked. Eastman completely changed his tune. He started talking about how much he loved the office, how he personally chose the wood, and he even invited Adamson to his house to see some chairs that he had painted himself.
Hold on, wait. The multimillionaire founder of Kodak was personally painting chairs.
I know, right?
That's kind of amazing.
It just shows that even incredibly successful people have these passions and interests that they love to talk about. And by tapping into that shared interest, Adamson was able to build this real connection with Eastman.
So it wasn't just about the sale anymore. It was like they actually connected on a human level.
Exactly. And I'm guessing you can guess what happened next.
Let me guess. Adamson got the sale.
He did. A massive order. $90,000.
Wow. See, appreciation pays off.
It does.
Yeah.
But I think what's even more important than the actual sale is he formed this genuine friendship with Eastman. And that's a key point in all of this. It's not about manipulating people. It's about building real connections.
So it's not just about getting what you want. It's about finding that common ground and building these like mutually beneficial relationships.
Right. Exactly. And Carnegie says that this principle of making people feel important, it's crucial in all aspects of life, like from business deals to personal relationships. He always liked to quote Disraeli, who said, "Talk to people about themselves and they will listen for hours."
It's so true.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we all crave that feeling of being heard and understood, right?
We do. And I think when you make that genuine effort to see people, to appreciate them for who they truly are, that's when you can build those lasting, meaningful connections.
So we've talked about a lot. Appreciation, disagreements, making people feel valued. It's a lot to take in. But, you know, besides these great stories, does Carnegie give any concrete advice on how to actually put all of this into practice?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, what can we actually do differently?
Well, he talks a lot about sincere encouragement.
Yeah.
He was a big believer in focusing on people's strengths.
Yeah.
And praising their efforts.
Even the small ones.
Especially the small ones.
Interesting.
He felt like that was way more effective than focusing on, like, criticizing what they were doing wrong.
Because then you just put people on the defensive.
Exactly.
That's funny. It makes me think of that saying, catch people doing something right.
Yes. That's it, exactly.
It's so true.
And he tells this really interesting story about this young boy who was struggling in school, failing classes, labeled as slow by his teachers.
Ouch. That's rough.
I know, right? But then he writes this composition, and okay, it wasn't perfect or anything, but it showed some real creativity.
Okay, what did the teacher do?
So instead of like marking up all the mistakes. The teacher just focused on the good stuff, praised the boy's effort, encouraged him to keep writing. And that little bit of encouragement made all the difference. That boy grew up to be one of the most famous authors ever, Charles
Wow.
Dickens.
Get out. No way.
It's true. It just shows how powerful a little encouragement can be. We all have the power to make a difference just by recognizing the good in others, and encouraging them.
So it's not just about complimenting people.
Right.
It's about being a source of support.
Exactly. Being a guide.
And Carnegie also talks about like the power of a challenge, right? Like
Yeah.
pushing people to rise to the occasion.
Yes. He calls it throwing down a challenge. He believed that, deep down, we're all motivated by this desire to prove ourselves.
Right.
So if you can present a task as a challenge, it's like you're tapping into that, and people will often surprise themselves with what they can accomplish.
It's like that whole idea of gamification. Make it fun, make it a game, and suddenly everyone's super motivated.
Yes. Yeah.
He tells this one great story about this mill manager who's like at his wit's end because his workers couldn't meet their production quotas.
Oh, no. What did he do?
So Charles Schwab, who was the company president at the time,
Okay.
he goes down to the mill floor himself to figure out what was going on.
Hands-on leadership.
I know, right? So he finds this group of workers that were lagging behind, and he goes up to them and asks them, what's your target for the day?
Okay.
And then get this, he takes a piece of chalk and writes a big 6 on the floor,
A 6? What is that even?
representing like the target number of units they were supposed to produce for the day, and then he just walks away.
Wait, that's it? He just wrote a number on the floor.
And you're not going to believe this. It worked.
No way.
The workers, they were so thrown off by this, like seeing the company president down on their level, doing something so unexpected, it became this thing. They were determined to hit that target.
Because of a 6 on the floor.
By the end of the day, they had not only met their quota, but exceeded it.
You're kidding.
That 6 on the floor, it became this symbol, this challenge that they all rallied around, and they rose to meet it. Pretty amazing, right?
That is a really good story.
It's crazy what a little bit of psychology can do.
It really is. But it also ties back into making people feel important, right?
Cool.
Like, you believe in them, you give them the challenge, and they can do amazing things.
Like that old saying, shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars.
I love that.
So looking back on everything we've talked about today,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like Carnegie's wisdom boils down to this: approaching all our interactions with sincerity,
Yeah.
empathy,
Yeah.
and a genuine desire to understand and appreciate others.
100%. It's about fostering those relationships that are built on mutual respect, encouragement, and a shared desire to do better.
It's not about manipulation or tricks or trying to win every argument. It's about actually connecting with people and
Yeah.
empowering them to be their best selves.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this book so timeless. Those core values, they never really go out of style.
It's true. Well said. Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive. I think it's safe to say How to Win Friends and Influence People definitely lives up to the hype.
It really does.
It's full of timeless advice that's as relevant today as it was, almost 100 years ago?
Amazing. And it's a must-read for anyone who wants to, like you said, build stronger relationships and navigate this crazy thing we call life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.